士们、先生们、各位来宾，大家好。I cannot follow Patrick. I'm going to have to speak English because I have a lot to say today. I was here for Teachers' Day, which has quite an effect on me because I believe we need to learn things from everyone, and my teachers taught me many, many things. One of the things they taught me was that you can't learn while you're speaking. So I have a big problem. I'm going to be speaking for the next 20 minutes or so. I'd really like to be listening to you. So in order to make this talk very effective for me and you, I would ask you to all take your cell phones out, find the on-off button, and make sure it's on, and open up your WeChat app. And my WeChat ID is JOES Bawu Bawu Ba. JOES Bawu Bawu Ba. So you can connect to me, and after, I promise I will connect to you after the talk, and we can continue the conversation as long as you'd like. So what I want to talk about today is the evolution of trade and transactions. And trust is at the heart of that. In the West, we always like to talk about free trade, but no trade is really free. The trading systems that are in place always have some sort of transaction cost associated with them. And throughout history, whenever the cost of the transaction goes down significantly, the volume of trade goes up in a magnificent sort of way. And some of the trading systems have a long, long history. So some of the systems you may be aware of here in China is the trading of salt. Up until just a few months ago, for over 1,000 years, that was a very controlled trading system, sale of salt. So when the transaction costs change, the pricing changes, the volume changes. So what can we do to make these big changes in transaction costs? Now, one of the things that I've discovered over the years is that there are macroeconomic drivers in the world that no one can really ignore if they want to be successful. So I have tried to study these and look for patterns. So over the last 20 years or so, as globalization got into full swing, we saw India focus in large part on low-cost software engineering, China moving from manufacture of the world, now that they're going into high-tech manufacturing, US focusing on brands and distribution, Europe, large open market. But the one thing that links all these systems together is they're large, complex systems that in many ways are non-deterministic. You cannot predict their behavior exactly. And whenever there is a lack of trust at any step, the transaction costs go up in a very large way. So we have witnessed over the last 20 years an explosion in connectivity networks. And these allow transactions of information. So we have now connected billions and billions of people together via the smartphone. And we are now just at the beginning of connecting literally tens of billions, and some day there will be trillions of objects connected into a network. And that network will need trust as well, because the amount of data that is coming from machines will greatly outstrip what is coming from individual people. So if we look at the networks that were formed around the consumer internet people networks. Just the top 5 have created over $2.5 trillion of market value over the last few years. So if we extend this thinking to linking all the objects in the world together, the amount of value that is going to be created is really unimaginable, and it will change the very nature of competition. There will be so many products and services that can be invented, created, so many customer needs to satisfy, that there will be an abundance of opportunity. So the question is, will there be the trust fabric that allows every individual to participate in this new economy? So let me go back into the past to try to project what might happen in the future. I come from GE. All these comments I'm making today are my personal comments, but I have been shaped by 31 years of working in a global network-based company. Thomas Edison, our founder, built one of the first electrical grids in the United States, and it was a decentralized type of grid. Eventually, the US went on to a centralized power grid structure, which changed the face of the earth. And now, the evolution of smart grids, the embedding of intelligence into the network, is going to unleash a whole set of real-time decisions. And these digital objects will have to be governed by trust and identity. So GE has this long history of network building, over 100 years of it. And we have done everything from building transportation networks, aircraft engines, locomotives, healthcare networks, all types of healthcare equipment in the hospitals, communication networks, television networks, radio networks. So in the end, it has all been about making a network and lowering the friction of moving either a physical object or a digital object with the lowest transaction costs. And as I said, trust in many cases is a large component of that cost. So we began as a computer company in the 60s, and the reason we went into the area was there was a new disruptive technology happening at that time, and it was called the paper check. So up until that point, people would bring large quantities of cash, and checking accounts allowed people to write their own denomination on a piece of paper. And they were very, very popular, these checking accounts. But the problem for the banks was it involved a lot of work in the back office. So GE teamed up with SRI and created an automated way to reconcile all the transactions and maintain trust in the system. And it really changed the face of banking. And Bank of America became the largest bank in the United States based on this explosion in checking technology. Now, over the last 20 years, as the internet revolution took hold, GE created a huge number of businesses based on networks that would bring digital information to a central authority and make decisions. So it is in the process of a digital industrial transformation where we don't just build the object, but we connect them and we monitor them, we manage them, and we optimize the system. One example, we built a telematics system that tracked all the deliveries for Walmart. So over 60,000 trailers deliver all the goods to the Walmart stores all around North America. And it creates millions and millions of machine-to-machine messages. Once again, the network has to be trusted, and the transaction costs have to be very low. Now, from an innovation point of view, when you connect to other objects that are similar, things like mobile healthcare networks or mobile water communication systems or mobile electrical power systems. It is the same process again. Build a network, create the trust fabric, and lower the transaction costs as much as possible. Here in China, you have increasingly become a logistics powerhouse. This was Yangshuo Port quite a few years ago now, maybe about 10 years ago. And you can see there's no containers to be found. This is exactly before they opened a few weeks later. And by building these networks of trust and visibility, you can optimize all the network activity, from moving wind turbine parts from Tianjin to Neimang, and making sure you can time everything and optimize that supply chain, and make sure that there's authentication and assurance in every step. But at this time, 10 or 15 years ago, blockchain was not in existence. So the technologies were incomplete, and the cost to implement it was actually higher than it could be today. So the situation is that we need a digital trust fabric that will connect all these networks to the machines and the minds and the people that need to make decisions. And there will be an unimaginable number of transactions that will be managed by these machines. And with the increasing power of AI, many of these machines will be automated, and they will be making transactions between themselves in negotiations. And that's why it's so important to have a trust fabric that includes the ability to do smart contracts. So in the end, we're going to manage this network of physical objects by a trust fabric that is automated and global and interoperable. Now, another trend that's going on right now is the desire for innovation. So everywhere I go in the world, governments, countries, cities, people are trying to get more and more innovation. And in many cases, the type of innovation we're talking about here would be labeled creative destruction. It is going to re-architect how we do business. And we see this happening in the United States, Silicon Valley, in the manufacturing initiatives in the United States, in China, Manufacturing 2025, Internet Plus. And there is more and more combination of ideas from around the world. Recently, Haier from Qingdao bought GE Appliances. So there is this marching forward, digital transformation, and a combination of ideas from around the world. As more and more robots enter this system, we need to make sure that the trust fabric allows that there is not a digital divide that is created. The number of robots is going up dramatically. China is now the biggest producer and purchaser of robots. So more and more digital machines are going to be online looking to make decisions and making transactions. So I believe that digital transactions can actually become a new product, a new service business in this area of hyper-connected supply chains and innovation. And potentially, it is going to be the largest digital fabric of all. And we've seen President Obama a few years ago create a digital manufacturing design innovation institute to make sure that digital objects, models, data can be brought together into a cloud platform and then shared. But if you're going to protect the IP in these situations in a distributed, federated ecosystem, a digital trust fabric is definitely something that we need to consider. Now, we can connect these digital marketplaces directly to the machines of production, things like 3D printing. And GE Aviation has committed to make hundreds of thousands of parts via 3D printing. So we are going to need to track and monitor all these parts from the time they're created to the time they're decommissioned. Once again, a trust fabric based on a blockchain type technology would seem to fit this application very well indeed. In our brilliant manufacturing programs, we look at linking all the data from the design through simulation, through the creation of digital twins. These are objects that simulate the real object, and this allows us to optimize in real time. So what are the constraints today on the internet? We are missing in many cases the guaranteed timing, the identity, and the trust. So we are trying now to create an industrial internet. I went to some of my colleagues and we established an industrial internet consortium, which now has over 3,500 members, 250 organizations, many of which are in China. And once we build this industrial internet, we can then put very complex systems on it that our lives depend on, things like aircraft engines, etc. And these machine-to-machine networks that we build on the industrial internet will be collaborative, and they will need a secure network. So we are building out optical fabric and putting the software into these systems that make it evolve at the speed of software and not of hardware. Now, once again, I go back to the concept of reducing the friction of payments will explode the opportunities for new businesses. A recent report by the European Central Bank recognizes how disruptive this new technology is going to be, and they went on to predict that perhaps a new virtual currency system would spring up around virtual communities, e.g. internet platforms. And I believe that the industrial transactions that I just outlined could be a very important case, and the Industrial Internet Consortium might be a home for that. So if a major internet company would decide to issue a centralized virtual currency system, if we could get to a few 100 million users, it certainly would take hold, and I think we are at the step where we can make that happen. So we are looking at reducing the friction of flow. We've seen it happen in the area of photographs and media. We've seen it happen with physical assets like hotel rooms, and cars, and now bikes. I think the next step, the logical step, is going to be blockchain technology reducing the friction for all these industrial transactions. So we demonstrated some blockchain technology a few years ago at the Industrial Internet Consortium at GE's Global Research Headquarters in New York. And we showed that we could control machines through the blockchain and send instructions and actually transact. Now, one of the first people that understood to be a true intellectual was Qinzhou Shao, and he was an ancient mathematician in China, and he wrote a mathematics treatise, and he said you can actually predict even when you don't have all the data. And he was really changed the way people think by using mathematics to create a trust in the prediction of the future. So I think we have that possibility here to create an interoperable, secure, and trusted industrial internet fabric. And this will, in effect, be the largest cyber-physical system that man has ever created. So I want to dedicate this talk to Joseph Schumpeter, who is a brilliant Australian economist who anticipated creative destruction and a lot of the ideas that we see coming to reality today. So with that, I will thank you.